Hello, hello, hello. All right. So this is really fascinating stuff. And so, Colin, I want to sort of kick it over to you to get us started. What do we need to know about living at home with robots?
Sure. So, I think that maybe I'll stand and walk around a little bit. As we think about robots and how the smart home is going to be made more usable and how robots are going to advance, I think we start by asking ourselves, where are the robots that we have been promised, right? 1962, Rosie the robot, that was what we were supposed to get. Here we are, 2018, and we've got a lot of interesting stuff, but I don't think anyone would say robots are as smart or intelligent as we want them to be. And the challenge is that robots just don't know exactly where they are. And if you don't know where you are, it's really hard to be smart, right? So think about this guy. He's a drummer. He drums. If he doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know it's ridiculous to be drumming in a library. This guy thinks he's doing an awesome job dunking the ball on home plate. In this picture, you've got someone ready to do laundry, but it's not going to go very well in the oven. And I think that, again, if you think about being a robot, you don't know anything. You have no idea as to the context that you're operating in. And so if you happen to be a robot lawnmower and you were put inside a house, you would mow. And that would be a really bad thing to have happen. And so the point of this quick little run-up is that context matters if you are going to actually be intelligent. AI can do many, many, many marvelous and wonderful things, but without context, it's not going to seem very smart. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a very cool robot that we just launched, and Michele is going to talk about a few major advancements and products that Google just launched that are major steps toward what our larger conversation today will be around the smart home. So this is the newest room of the i7. We launched it a couple weeks ago. And for the first time, the robot knows where it is. So what does that mean? Well, it means that this robot has a concept of rooms, a concept of where the kitchen is, where the living room is. It makes these determinations by, as it moves through the house, it's building a map. And building the map itself is not something completely new to robots, but it then remembers the map. So regardless of where the robot is put down, it'll know where it is in the map, and the map is shown to the user. Rooms are suggested, and you tweak the rooms and name the rooms, and suddenly you know stuff. You know more about your environment, and thus you can be smarter. So how do we take advantage of this this knowledge, right? So at the bottom is a house, a typical house, and on your left is how a robot would typically clean that room. Because it doesn't know what a room is, it doesn't know when it's leaving the room and coming back. This is kind of like the lawnmower in the living room. You just don't know enough to be smart. Whereas on your right, if the robot knows what a room is, it can clean a room and then move to the next one and clean a room. And that's cool. It means that the robot's about 25% more efficient and doesn't look stupid. So that would be kind of a good idea. And the i7 does that. But the real magic is that you can say, okay, Google, clean the kitchen. And that's game changing, right? Because if I was cleaning my, say I was cooking and I made a mess in the kitchen, with the old system, you'd have to clean the entire house in order to clean up that mess. Now, you say, okay, Google, clean the kitchen. And the right thing happens. This is an example of how a smart home is supposed to be. You say what you want to have happen, and the right thing just automatically happens. And we couple that technology with another cool thing, and this is the Clean Base. And the Clean Base empties the Roomba. So that Clean Base will hold 30 full bins of debris. And so that if you empty your Roomba every 1 to 2 weeks, that means you could not touch your Roomba for a year. That Roomba could just happily live in your home. If you make a mess, hey Roomba, clean up the living room. Other than that, it would come out on whatever schedule you give it and contribute to a simpler, cleaner home that you can all enjoy. And so that when we think about the smart home, and I'm sure we'll get into this as we go forward, a smart home isn't about adding complexity. The smart home is about simplifying and finding partners to work with us to have an easier experience. And this is the product that personally I've wanted to build for 12 years, ever since the first Roomba came out in 2002, because this one delivers on the promise. Yeah, you buy the Roomba, you put it in your house, and your floor is forever clean. And if you make a mess, you just say, clean it up, and the right thing happens, and it puts itself away. This is an exemplar, a real step in a smart home that works for you as opposed to the other way around. So I'm going to stop here and hand it over to Michele to talk about some really cool things that you're working on.
Cool. Thanks, Colin. Is that the...
That's the clicker.
All right. So, hi. Thanks for having us here today. What Colin was just talking about on how do we simplify the smart home, I'm really excited to talk about something that Google announced this week, which is called the Google Home Hub. If any of you are smart home or connected home people, this is not a hub like a Zigbee, Z-Wave, that kind of a hub we've traditionally thought about it. This is really meant to be the hub, the central hub of how you control things and Google services throughout your home. It's assistant enabled, so you can speak to it, and you can also do all of the controls from the screen as well. And it really is one of the best ways to access, I think, all of the Google services. So what's unique about this product, and I think really powerful, is it pulls up things like Google Maps, Google Search, it has your calendar. So I'm guessing some of you at least have used the Google Assistant. So when I say, okay, Google, good morning, it can tell me things like, good morning, Michele, here's your calendar, here's the best way to work. And instead of just giving it to me over voice, like our speakers do today, I can also see it on the screen. I've been living with one of these for about 6 months, and I can tell you, it actually is a game changer. I wasn't really sure I was going to use it that much at first, and then I started using it more and more, and found that the power of the visual display and all the Google services brought something very different to life in terms of simplifying my daily routines and making all of the connected home come together. And one of the things Colin and I talk a lot about is context and how important context is to the connected home. And I think these devices, the visual displays, are very, very important for context. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. So as I mentioned, this is really the best of Google. Now with a visual display, you can see the virtual assistant. It taps into search, Maps, calendar, all of that. It also controls all of your connected devices, whether they're Nest devices or any of the 10,000 devices that now work with the Google Assistant. It also has YouTube, so if you want to play how-to movies, or you just want to watch a quick video, or you want to watch the news in the morning as you're getting ready for work, it's a simple and easy way to do that. And I won't get into it now, but it has an incredible experience with Google Photos, so I invite you to check it out when you can. One of the things that Colin mentioned is the power of the connected home, I think, is really in how you bring all of the different partner products together. Every single one of our homes is different. We all have different needs, and we all have the need for different products to be in our homes, to customize our homes. And our context is different in our homes. And so what we've been working on really hard at Google over the last year is to increase the number of partners that work with the Google Assistant. And we've been really excited to work with iRobot on this. We just recently announced, actually this week, that we are working with over 1,000 brands and 10,000 devices. And through our efforts this year, there are actually over 200 million devices that are in people's homes today that can be assistant enabled. And I think one of the things, people always think about smart home and it feels expensive and it feels like a little bit unattainable. So one thing that we've worked on this year is how do we light up the devices that are already in people's homes, like televisions and set-top boxes and security systems, so that they just work with the assistant and they can get started on smart home more easily, and thereby making it more accessible to everybody. So this is an exciting thing for us to be able to do, and something that we are really passionate about enabling. And then the question is, really, what are the next steps with that? And where do we take it from here? So the Google Home Hub, I love this, and one reason I really love this is because one of the things about smart home and voice assistants is they're great and they're super simple, but you don't always see what's going on. And so what the Home Hub has on it is this home view that keeps popping down there. And that gives you a dashboard display of all the connected devices in your home and one-touch access to all of those. So if I just want to turn on and off the lights, or if I want to change the color of the lights, or if I hear something outside and I want to see what's going on with my outdoor cam, or I want to see who's at my door, I can just tap, or I can talk to it as well, and it'll come up on the Home Hub. So it's just an addition to context and control, and really at the core of the smart home is enabling consumers to have better control of their home and simplified context so that they know what's going on. Because as Colin said, it really matters to know where you are. And that's actually one of the things that this visual display does as well, is you can glance at it and see where everything is in your home. The other thing that's really cool about the home view is it automatically gives you context. We actually didn't even talk about this, but you've got automatic context. It organizes your devices into the correct rooms. You don't have to do anything, and it comes up very simply and easily, and you've got that immediate context. So we're super excited. I've been using this like I said, for a while now, and it is a real game changer in being able to control and I think have a simplified smart home, and just one of the next steps in the evolution of the smart home. So let's talk a little bit about the vision of the smart home. I'm going to sit down. We can, Colin and I have been talking about this a bit. Yeah. So we've seen tremendous growth in the smart home so far. And we've seen a lot of, I think we're really at a crux in the smart home market. But smart homes actually aren't all that smart today. And this is something that we keep having this conversation about. There's a long way for it to go before we think it truly gets intelligent.
Yeah. What needs to happen to get to that point?
Well, I think that you have to start with an idea of what you're going for. And, I think in my mind, people are not eager to add complexity into their world. And so that whatever you do, the end result should be, I live my life in the home, and that experience is enriched by the home doing the right thing. And people also are really bad at programming. I don't think we've gotten any smarter since we couldn't program the clock on our VCR. And so that in addition to just doing the right thing, the home has to program itself and maintain itself, because what you had a chart of all the billions of connected devices. How many devices do you think are going to be in the home?
I think it depends on someone's home, but I think eventually we're going to have, probably anywhere between 5 to 20 devices in people's homes that are connected or more.
Wow.
Because I think 5 is low.
5 is low.
Because every light bulb, every,
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how you're counting those devices.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about, this is fascinating. It's super interesting. I love the idea of, being able to tell a robot, hey, I just made a mess. Can you clean it up? But what I'm curious is why do we need this? Why do we need a smart home? Why does this matter?
I'm going to bring up our next slide. This is something that we've talked about just as how we think about the connected home. And we like to think about it as the thoughtful home. There's a lot of things today where we can just do things better. And as Colin and I have chatted, we both get asked a lot, what's the killer app for the smart home? And I don't think there's one. I really think it's about making life simpler. Our most precious commodity is time. And one of the things that a truly thoughtful home can do is save you time. I have an abnormally large number of smart devices in my home. I think I said 5 might be the baseline. That's for normal human beings. I have probably 35. But when you bring all these together and you voice enable them and they have context, I can do something like, okay, Google, good night, and it turns off the lights, just the lights I actually want turned off. It turns on my bedside lights, but turns off all the rest of the lights in the house. It makes sure that my connected locks are locked, so my doors are locked, my alarm system is turned on, my thermostat's set to 66, and it tells me my calendar for the next day, so I know what time my first meeting is, and where it is, so I know I'm already set for the next morning. And then the assistant actually, my husband likes to go to bed to the sound of crickets, so it actually starts playing cricket sounds, I'm not kidding, before we go to bed. Now, can I do all that manually? Absolutely. But it's 11:30, I'm tired, I'm already late for bed anyway, and I don't want to run around the house doing all that stuff. And so there's just a magic and a time-saving aspect to being able to have Google do all that for me. And so I do think that it's that simplification of our lives that really makes a impact over time.
Yeah. Now, do you think that is a smart home for everybody, or is there a particular type of person that you think that you would be targeting, that you think that this makes the most sense for?
So I think that I agree with Michele that the smart home isn't any one thing. And the way I see the smart home evolving is people starting somewhere, and it could be by getting a robot vacuum, or it could be that they want to have a Google Assistant in their home, and then they want the next thing. And so maybe they go and add a smart TV, or they add a smart thermostat, or they get interested in using this technology for security. And the system grows with the person. And so that it can be added to bit by bit. And as long as the experience is magical and useful, then, well, maybe next time they need to go buy a new light bulb, they spend an extra few dollars and get a smart light bulb, and make it so that the bedroom turns itself off, or make it so the first floor of the house turns itself automatically, because they always forget to turn that off. And so it's an incremental increase, device by device, toward a more magical home that assists you as opposed to burdens you.
Yeah, I mean, well, this technology seems like it could be very transformational. I'm thinking of, people with disabilities, an aging population. It seems like this type of technology, being able to have all of these devices that are connected within your home, makes it easier for you to stay in your home and to operate. It seems like that would be a great use case for
I
it.
completely agree with you. You hit the nail on the head, too, especially for an aging population. My mother-in-law has pretty advanced stage Alzheimer's. We want to keep her in her home because it's familiar to her. And I have 7 cameras around her house so that we can make sure that she hasn't fallen. We can see how she's doing with her caretaker. And as we sensor enable these homes, we have a better way of, and cameras are a little creepy. Like, do I want to have 7 cameras in our home? I don't. But I actually don't have a better way of doing that today. Over the next several years, I believe that there's going to be more services that are built on top of just sensors to be able to say, to let me know, did Grandma make it to the kitchen this morning without having to have a camera in the room? Because there'll be a sensor on the refrigerator that can tell me that she made it into the kitchen that morning by 9 a.m., and that's her normal time. So as we get smarter about this and more perceptive, right, and we have context around, where is the kitchen?
Where is the kitchen?
First of all, and did she make it from the bedroom to the kitchen? And is it on time? Is there a sense of time? Like, normal is Grandma is in the kitchen by 9 a.m., so if Grandma isn't in the kitchen by 9 a.m., maybe you should give her a call. Maybe it's fine, and maybe I know, because I have better context than my sensor does, that she's at my house, and it's fine that no one did. But being able to start using the sensors intelligently that way, coupled with context, can be a real game changer. And I think that can, for both the elderly and, like you said, disabled, these are really remarkable devices for people that are visually disabled, or there's actually an integration that Philips Hue did with the Nest Protects a few years ago. And the Nest Protect is a smoke detector and CO monitor that when the Protect went off, the Hue lights in the house would blink and turn red. So if you're deaf, you're able to say, hey, because you wouldn't necessarily know, you can say, oh wow, there's actually an emergency event in my house that I need to take care of, especially if it was a CO type of event, which you couldn't smell.
So I think that, you ask about how can the smart home help and solve some of the big problems. I think that so far I was talking about how do I make my house more responsive to me, more convenient for me. But as we move into things like elder care, things like security, again, we have to go and take a systems level approach to these problems. Right? If any of you put in one camera or 1 or 2 things like a motion detector up in your bedroom, you very quickly realize, I'm not sure I've fully helped, because now I'm getting alerts that something is wrong, but I don't know what that something is. Okay, I have a home in a different state. The motion sensor in the bedroom went off. What am I supposed to do? And so as we think about what should a security system do in the home, or I think about what should a system that acts as a safety blanket for an independent living elder person, it's not one thing that is going to solve this problem. It's a number of devices working together to sense there's an issue, help you understand what that issue is, and minimize the time that you pick up the phone and say, something's wrong. I know a neighbor a few blocks away, maybe they'll come drive over and tell me whether my house is actually burning down or not.
Well, so how are you thinking about that as you're developing this technology?
Well, the smart home is not a collection of devices. It's a system that has a number of different information sources that pull together an answer to the question of what's going on. So, today we make a huge step forward, that we have sort of an understanding of what that home looks like that's understood by the home with products like the Google Hub. We're starting to integrate these devices together into a singular place where you have access to multiple bits of information from which you can intuit a situation. In the future, maybe there's, you get an alarm and a robot is deployed to where that alarm is to give you live understanding of, well, is the back door really open, or did something just, a wind just blow and jostle the door enough to activate the sensor?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so we think, I think right now we have a connected home. I joke that I have a Franken home because mine isn't particularly connected all that well, and I have a bunch of diverse devices. One of the things that products like the Google Home Hub solve is that I can go from having a collection of devices to having one single place to control them all. But over time, where I think we're going to go is we start getting smarter about context behind the scenes, and we have, all of these devices have sensors in them. As we can start to sensor map, we can apply intelligence to this through machine learning and be able to start to understand what are the patterns in the home, and then be able to anticipate some things. And that, to me, is what starts to create a truly thoughtful home, is when you can start to anticipate through pattern matching that you've seen in the home for a while. So if every night at 7:30 the lights go out in my kid's room, I can start to ask, would you like me to turn the lights out at that time? Or the garage door always closes by this time of day, and I don't know about you guys, but I've left my garage door open. I have driven back home to make sure that my garage door is closed. And to be able to say, I know that I need to close that garage door when the house is empty. And so making that happen automatically, but just adding that layer of intelligence into it that allows the home to behave and be, to create both peace of mind, to behave more intelligently so that I don't have to do the work, and just generally to behave in a more thoughtful way. But it's all based on context and being able to pull the intelligence together.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. No, I wanted to talk about the fact that as homes become more aware of themselves, then they can be better partners. Why should it be that there's a room that's been unoccupied for 35 minutes and yet all of the lights and the television and everything else is still on in that particular room when people have moved on and are sipping their drinks in the living room? And so if home could be your partner, then from a security perspective, you have peace of mind. From an energy efficiency perspective, your home can save a tremendous amount of power and energy. And that type of system, for someone like myself, makes me feel better about how I am living, because I'm not wasting energy. And I come home and the money I invest in my cool toys the complexity of them can be managed, and so that my white noise machine is actually used, that the cool funky lighting is something that is actually used and I can enjoy it more. But for the elderly, it has a profoundly larger impact. And this is ultimately where I think we're going to see the deep meaning and benefit of the smart home, is that we're rapidly approaching a situation where there are not enough younger people to look after the older generation as the age pyramid inverts. We're faced with a situation where the idea of the old method of concentrating the elderly in assisted living facilities is no longer economic. Right now, it's about paying the mortgage on a $2 million home to support a parent in even a modest level of comfort assisted living facility. So, and the elderly people don't want to do that anyway. They want to live independently. And so if you could have a home that's truly your partner, that can look after you, allow the right people to be alerted if something is out of the ordinary, that's completely life-changing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's clear that there's a lot of value to this. So there's another side of it, too, which is, this idea you were talking about, Michele, of, your home really understanding patterns and behavior. I mean, we're talking about a lot of data, a lot of personal information that your home, these devices would have. And so, there are concerns around privacy, security, data, about the data that these devices or these home systems will have. And how are you both thinking about that as you develop these technologies?
So we take data and privacy incredibly seriously. I probably spend most of my time in product development, aside from the development part of it, working with our privacy and legal groups before we release anything. At the end of the day, though, so we do everything that we can to protect people's data and privacy, particularly in their home. And I think there's a couple layers. It can happen both at literally at the protocol layer, like is your smart home stack secure, that you built the technology that you're building on, which is why Google's investing in a lot of newer technologies like Thread. That's a very secure protocol. All the way up to, and I think this may be the most important thing, giving consumers control. So you as a consumer, if you are using smart devices, I think it's just critical that you know what data is being exposed, how that data is being used, and you have the choice over how that data can be used. Settings are incredibly important in all of the smart devices that we have, and in things like the Google Home app and in the Home Hub. You can have choice on how you're exposing the settings, what you let Google see. If you're integrating in data from any of our third-party partners, you go through a terms of service and an acceptance of what the data is that you're sharing. So in my mind, yes, there's a lot of data out there, but we try to make it as clear to the consumer as we can about what data they're sharing, and they can say, no, I don't want to share that. And I think that at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. We have a responsibility to protect that data, but we also have a big responsibility to make sure that the consumers have total control over what they're sharing and can shut that off at any time.
Right, and I echo everything Michele just said. It's about, if you're going to share the data, how do you remain in control, have confidence the company you're sharing it with will take all reasonable efforts to protect that data, that if you change your mind, you can have that company forget everything it knows about you, and understand the benefit that the sharing of the data will deliver to you. And as long as you're in control, can change your mind, and have visibility as to what information you're actually sharing, I think you're in a great place. Because if your Roomba's going to, if you want it to clean the kitchen when you say, hey Google, clean the kitchen, the robot needs to know where the kitchen is, right? It's not magic. And so and if you want your house to take care of you as you live in it, it needs to understand what's going on in that house. And if you're an elder and you share some data and you get to stay in your house for another 2 years, that's a pretty easy decision to make, as long as you have confidence that the data is being well managed. If you're thinking about more on the convenience side, well, maybe some people say yes and some people say no, and I think that not every i7 customer is going to activate mapping, and that's okay. But we're very clear about, if you do activate the mapping, well, then you're going to unlock all of this really magical stuff, and iRobot is going to ensure that you remain in control.
So looking further out, what is next for the technology? It seems like we're still talking about people sort of wrapping their mind around this and adopting it. What's next, and what is it that you both are working on to move us closer to a future of smart homes?
So what we look at is how do we start anticipating people's needs better to make the experience just more seamless. And so when I come home, it knows I'm home. It knows I'm home through my GPS, and I break the geofence. And when I come home, certain things should just automatically happen if I want them to. So as I walk up to the door can unlock. My house should be preset to a certain temperature. We can even know, we don't today, but we could even predict, what room am I going to go into the lights would be on in those rooms, things like that. So we can start, as we start to anticipate, as we start to understand your patterns, we can start to anticipate what your needs are. I do think, I'm guessing that most of us in this room are fairly technical, and we overthink some of these things. When I talk to a lot of people about smart homes who aren't technical at all, they go, well, of course you would just do that because that's what a smart home is, right? You're going to just turn on the lights for me before I go into the room because you know I'm coming. And we're actually not there yet. I mean, you could do that, but I think that's where we're going to get to, is just being that more thoughtful, anticipatory home that's going to have these devices work together very, very seamlessly. Right now, we're very, I think we have these rudimentary routines. It was the thing I described to you later. I can't wait to get an i7 and make that part of my goodnight routine so it'll clean my kitchen for me. At some point, you shouldn't even have to set up these routines. These routines should be able to, the devices should understand what you do on a nightly basis and be able to set those things and do those automatically for you.
At iRobot, we're at a point where, in order to move forward, we need to get smarter. In order to get smarter, we need to understand our environment. You can say, well, why are there no robots in the home with arms? Right? Because what's the point of having an arm if you don't know where anything is? Then you have a teleoperated toy that your kids can use and hazmat teams can use, but is not in keeping with this vision of the smart home. And so we're very focused right now on improving robot AI. And we're improving robot AI through improving our understanding of the environments our robots operate in, with the goal of being able to start by operating a smarter vacuum cleaner, a smarter mopping robot, having them working together in partnership, and then taking the next step. Once we know where things are, it unlocks a whole new cadre of applications that our robot toolkit can address. And this is really a barrier right now for robotics. We're pretty good at cleaning flat surfaces on the floor with heuristic strategies and now more directive strategies. To get off the floor into the 3D world requires better robot AI and thus better understanding of the home so we can do those things.
Yeah, and I do think the pieces of this are starting to come together. Like, we rolled out the ability, people are starting to have more and more of these smart speakers in their home, like I think we're at like 2.5 on average. We know which room you're in now when you're speaking to a speaker, which is great, because it used to be, I would say, okay, Google, and 3 devices would light up. All I have to say now is if I'm in my, I have connected lights kind of all over my house, but if I'm in my master bedroom and I say, okay, Google, turn off the lights, it does it just in that room. So we're gradually putting the pieces step by step, companies like iRobot, through companies like Google, to all the building blocks are starting to come into place to create this home that can be anticipatory and truly helpful to you over time.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking out in the future, and let's say everyone at some point has a smart home, then what? What's next?
Well, then we're extending people's ability to live independently. I mean, this is a tidal wave scale challenge, and if we did nothing else to, other than provide the tools to allow people to live independently longer, a year longer, 2 years longer, 3 years longer, this is life-changing for those people. This is transformational as far as the economy. I mean, we're literally facing a situation where the aging population is going to see a decrease in their standard of living unless technology comes and gives us the tools to allow them to live independently. It's either we do it or we suffer the consequences. And so, it is something that we frequently encounter. I can have just launched my next greatest robot, and I'll have a room full of press, and they'll politely clap. And the first question is, okay, Colin, that's really cool. What's next? And the reason they ask that question is because the promise of robots, the promise of technology is so large that surely it has to be more than vacuuming. Surely it has to be more than turning on and off lights and my television. And I want that thing, which is great and exciting, but also a little frustrating at the same time. But we are seeing a quickening. I agree with Michele that the building blocks are in place. We need better robot AI, and I consider a smart home a robot, that in order to do the anticipatory actions, you need context. In order to go and figure out what is actually going on in the home, you need context. And that's really what's being developed today.
Yeah, so it's one step at a time.
One step at a time.
But I would agree. I think I couldn't have said it better. It changes the way people live. Let's face it, a lot of elderly people, they're the least tech savvy, right? I remember trying to teach my dad how to use an iPad. And for most of us, it's just dead simple. But adopting this technology for older people is hard. If we don't make it just seamless and so easy, we can't have that impact, and we have to have that impact. Because it's, if you, like the stats you just said, where the population's going, we need to be able to solve these problems for society. Also, the impact it has on people who are disabled as well. I mean, it's really incredible. I was talking to a coworker the other day who he is visually impaired, and we're lighting up a bunch of appliances. We're working with all the major appliance manufacturers to voice control things like ovens, and to be able to say, okay, gee, what's my oven temperature? And is the oven on, right? Is the stove on for somebody who's visually impaired? Is just, it's actually transformative. So this is all means to a much bigger end of making people's lives better. And like you said, being able to voice turn on off my lights, yeah, it's fun, but it's not transformative for most of us. But for a lot of people, once we get to that level where the home actually can act on their behalf and make their lives simpler and safer and give everybody peace of mind. I mean, I have those 7 cameras in my mother-in-law's house for peace of mind, right? And there are way better ways.
So you just need one that moves.
I know. Well, okay, where is it? Let's go, Colin.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I know we're talking mostly about smart homes, but I'm wondering about applications outside the home. So I'm thinking hospitals, retail stores. I mean, is that something that you see as a possibility, as warranted, as something that we might need, taking this idea of a smart ecosystem outside the home into other types of spaces?
Sure. Well, there's a very adjacent major phenomenon going on, and that's telehealth. Mm-hmm. How does healthcare get projected into the home? How does healthcare get projected into hospitals? And we've been involved for a long time with a project where robots are used in remote hospitals to allow doctors in a big city that might be a specialist to beam into that remote hospital and provide care. I think that's working, and that is being used frequently, but also how does that same doctor or nurse project their presence into the home? And I think that's an area of future work and development. I think that you can have a browser-based interaction today with a doctor or a medical advisor, and that the use of that technology is growing very rapidly. How can we make it better?
There's a lot being done in what I'd call industrial commercial IoT as well, and it's not something I'm an expert in, but we are seeing like in retail, there's a huge push on how can you use sensor-driven things in retail to enable a better shopping experience, things like that. So I think we're going to see this happen on all levels, and to make hopefully things more efficient and more streamlined, and hopefully more cost-saving over time as well, particularly with telemedicine.
Yeah, but it sounds like first there's quite a few steps before we get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, you're at a point where we're going from a collection of disconnected cool things where the mental model for the smart home for the last number of years was, hey, I make light bulbs. I should put a Wi-Fi chip or a Zigbee chip in it and write an app. I make, a television or a stove, or let's just connect everything and we'll be smart. And, the cell phone will be the magic universal remote for the home, and that's a failed idea. It's just too much complexity. So now we're moving into this time where with the Google Hub, we're trying to do integration with i7 and what we're trying to do in the home. We're trying to build better robot AIs to help pull all of these pieces together. And it's going to be a very cool it's really 2 or 3 years, right? Not 5 or 10 years, but we're going to see huge change in the smart home in the very near term, and it's going to transform the experience of what it means to live in a smart home. And I like the idea of thoughtful home. So maybe we move from, smart homes aren't smart to something higher level.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we are out of time. I don't know if we have time for a couple questions, maybe. Yeah. Take some audience questions. Yeah. There's a few hands up.
I don't know if this is what the right word is, but there was everything felt so passive. There was nothing about help grandma get out of bed, help her up from a chair.
Yep. So we start with this idea that your house is active in support of what you're trying to do. Help grandma out of the chair or out of bed is really hard. And before we go tackle the most difficult of elder care challenges, I'm hopeful that we can create an environment that is supportive of grandma without risking physical manipulation. And I think we'll get there, but that is just frankly not a low-hanging fruit of elder care. And there's a lot that will need to come together in order for that to work.
Yeah. All right, there are some more questions over here. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jameson. I'm an experience designer for one of the companies that Google partners with. Actually, we have some speakers in the smart home. And actually, we partner also with Amazon. And as a kid growing up, I got to choose between PC and Apple quite often. And your two companies have the reach of smart home that a lot of smart home hubs, if you would, or central units don't have, just because of that. I'm wondering, both as a designer who's had to design for both experiences, but also as a consumer whose friends have had to choose which smart home they were going to go with. I was just wondering if there was any time specifically for Google that you guys might have considered, cross-platform kind of stuff or anything. And I understand there's business value to launching, but we have a platform as a company. But I'm just curious if that ever crosses the desks of leaders and the people upstairs.
I would say those things, these business conversations go on all the time. It's usually even between companies like ours, it's even a higher level discussion of, than something like Assistant versus Alexa. It's, on a complete business level experience, how we would bring things together. So all I can say is I know conversations go on. What that means for the future, I have no idea, but discussions absolutely go on. We have two pretty bifurcated systems today, and we try to make it as seamless as we can for developers like you guys who have to develop for both platforms. But where that will play out, I have no idea. But the conversations absolutely go on, and where they will come out, I can't comment and actually don't know.
All right, maybe one more question. Yeah, back there.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So we started the last panel with two questions. One was, can we deliver on the AI promise? And the second question was, who are we delivering this promise to? Mm-hmm. Is it inclusive? Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate the focus on the elderly and the focus on people with disabilities, but I'm guessing that's the 1%. And I really appreciate that you're saving time, but my guess is that you don't need to save as much time as opposed to the parent who's traveling 3 hours to get to work. And so I'm wondering if you could address how your organizations are thinking about the inclusion of your product and to address these communities.
That's a great question.
Okay, so I would start off by saying long-term, the elderly are not the 1%. They're going to be the demographic most profoundly impacted by successfully executing on the strategies that we're pursuing. So that, the inversion of the age pyramid is real. Living independently is something that a huge percentage of the population is going to address. And wherever I go, I'm just back from Japan, where the problem is acute today. So let me just say that's real. It's not the tail wagging the dog. That's the dog that we need to get to. And the path there to actually deliver the types of things that will change the ability to live independently are hard and are going to take time and are going to take billions of dollars of R&D dollars to get to. And it will be incremental. We'll increase independence by 6 months, then a year and a half by not ticking these boxes off. So again, I'll start there, maybe give you a chance, and then I have a few more things.
Yeah, another thing I would say is actually the people, at least at Google, who are working on these products are the people who are traveling, are working parents who are traveling, have hour and a half to 3 hour commutes every day. So we actively live this. We're some of the, I think, the biggest smart home advocates that you could imagine. And we understand how being able to remotely manage your home and have things happen for you in a more automated and anticipatory fashion can just make your life better. I mean, somebody who's commuting 3 hours a day, I mentioned that I think one of the big benefits of this is saving time. Those are exactly the busy working parent. If you can save them a half an hour a day of just chores and things like that, it matters. My kids are a little bigger now, but when mine were really little, I had zero time to do this stuff. And the fact that I could have my smart home work for me and just take care of some of this stuff, including cleaning my kitchen when I went to bed, is I think, is it life-changing? No, it can be for elderly and disabled people, but boy, does it make my life better? Absolutely. And that's why so many of us are excited about this, because we do live this every day.
And relative to inclusion, just a fun statistic. These things are not fringe product. Last year, the #1 selling vacuum cleaner in the United States was Roomba. So again, it's not just the financial digerati that are buying these labor saving devices. It's an explicit strategy to really deliver utility at an accessible price. And so, we have good, better, best pricing, and entry level allows tremendous accessibility to our products. And then once you own Roomba, you're going to probably trade up, and that's a good business strategy for us. So we think very hard about how can we architect the types of models that we're building to make this a very inclusive product offering.
Yeah, and I'll make one more comment onto that, which is, as somebody who sees the ecosystem and works with many, many partners, I am seeing the prices come down on this. And I think that is actually one of the things, if we want to democratize kind of the smart home and robots, the prices need to come down. But like anything else with technology, we see that happen over time. And I'm starting to see a lot of things. It used to be that smart light bulbs, they're still kind of expensive, but now I'm seeing smart light bulbs come down into a range that really makes them an affordable option. And then when you start coupling that in with things like energy savings, which is another thing that the smart home, your booth has a great partner in there with Sense, who can help us figure out how to do better energy savings across the home. And I think that's another thing that we didn't even touch on. But over time, the price of this is going to come down, and it's going to be a lot more democratized. Some of these products can be expensive today, but we're starting to see that shift as the technology grows, and it's just sort of that economic puzzle.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all the time that we have. I really want to thank Michele and Colin for this great discussion.
Thank you for doing a
Thank
great
you.
job.
All right. So we will be taking a break, and we'll be back at 1, where we will have a conversation with Maureen Dowd.